The Rockpile Report.
Buffalo, New York is going to be the epicenter of every stargazing nerd's wet dream.
With Buffalo Bills season ticket holder, Drew Geter.
If there was ever a time to break out Skyline Chili, it's when the Bills are 5-2, right?
The Rockpile Report. The pettiest, hardest drinking Bills podcast.
Everybody to another edition of the Rockpile Report podcast. I'm your host, Bills season ticket holder Drew Geter. That's my producer, Chris Kruger. Next to me in studio, Dr. Kyle Trimble from bangedupbills.com. And we're here tonight to talk about our Week 13 preview, San Francisco 49ers against the Buffalo Bills. But before we dive into that, guys, it's Thanksgiving. Now, I'm not going to do some hack bit about let's go around the table and talk about what we're thankful for, because that's honestly for grade school children. I guess the question is, where should Thanksgiving rank in terms of holidays? Like, we've got a friend who just despises it for reasons that I can't quite fathom. I can't wrap my head around it. He rails against the institution of Thanksgiving. And I don't understand, because it's a day literally built around football and gluttony, which is not just like, as Buffalonians, I feel like that should be part of like a core thing that makes you a human being coming from Western New York, like gluttony, football. I mean, I guess there's not a lot of debauchery, right? Like, Chris, it's not exactly a Bills tailgate.
No, Thanksgiving is number one, though, in the holiday ranking. Football, food, and most importantly, no gifts.
Wait, so is this your thing? See, so
I don't like gifts.
So let's expand on that for a second. Why is it that you don't like gifts? Like, gift giving bothers? Is it because
it's giving and receiving? It bothers me because, especially if you're with someone for so long, I think eventually you just run out of shit to buy them, and then over time, from your first Christmas or birthday with somebody, gifts generally don't get better. You just buy all of the like whatever topic that they like. Like my wife loves books, so broad subject books. I can only get her so much over the years that is book related, whether it's a subscription, what are the like a book placeholder, so when you close up for the night you can start back up the next day. There's so many things that I can get within books, and I feel like I'm almost done.
Kyle, what do you think about the institution of Thanksgiving?
I'm with Chris in that, you get the food, you get the football, but then, the gifts is not, a prime thing. Like, you might give thanks, that's different, but you're not having to give gifts. You're having to create a good meal, and you're really sharing the time together with everybody.
I think that's why I love Thanksgiving, right? Now, not because of the no gifts, but because it's like Christmas without the pressure.
Yeah.
There's no pressure to perform. There's no expectations. I mean, hell, how many people, after they're done eating, like, everyone unbuttons their pants and just kind of rolls around, just like, hey, we all dressed up for this thing, and now that we're all full of red wine, bourbon, and turkey, maybe about 1.5 pounds of sausage stuffing, I'm going to unbutton the top button of my pants, untuck my undershirt, and just strut around, and you're all going to accept it. Why? Because you're family, and that's what this is about. We let it all hang out, and we all accept each other and are thankful for each other's presence, even though we're all a hot mess. I feel like we can live in that environment. Like
my issue in this household is stuffing on Thanksgiving. That's the real issue. Because when I started dating Jessica, first Thanksgiving together, she made stuffing, which I would put probably 2 or 3 in my Thanksgiving food ranking. She made them with mushrooms.
Ooh.
No, thank you. I'm not eating those.
No, I would be open to eating that, but that's not the first thing I'm thinking about. Is because that's a pretty moist thing when you think about it in terms of stuffing. I want it to be dry, but like I'm not picturing mushrooms. I'm not picturing carrots. Celery is okay in there. Onion. That's not one of the things like that makes it too moist and mushy now.
See, I would eat that. There's one thing. There's only one take. Like if I have a hot Thanksgiving take, there's one thing that you could roll out on Thanksgiving. I'm agnostic to cranberry sauce. It can be from the can. It can be fresh. I'll still eat it. My wife actually makes a cranberry mayonnaise every year. And I'll tell you what, after the meal, when you have that on sandwiches for second dinner, because really, I mean, what is a day of gluttony without a second dinner?
Yeah.
That's why you buy a 22-pound turkey for 8 people. It's because you know you're not only going to stuff your face once, but twice.
And sometimes 3 times.
Sometimes 3 if you're lucky.
No.
Now, I don't care about any of it. You could put mushrooms in my stuffing. Probably going to eat it if it's seasoned properly.
Well, she's got to make 2 different stuffings now, one with mushrooms, one without. And for this, I think I picked up a 16-pound turkey, and there's 4 of us that will eat turkey. Jessica's father, Gary, will not eat turkey. We have to make him a steak.
I'm not going to lie.
Which he's already purchased.
I'm not going to lie. He's killing it. He is the Ron Swanson of Thanksgiving, and I'm not going to lie. He is killing it, and I'm a little jealous of him right now. No. For me, there's only one like no-fly zone. And maybe it's because I used to be 350 pounds, so I think I have like a little bit of like a thing about this. But
Narragansett?
Well, it starts with dessert, right? Dessert is already a sketchy thing for me because of, it was one of the easiest things to write off when you're trying to drop 150 pounds. And so in that way, you go, oh, I don't need dessert. And then slowly you kind of come back and you go, okay, there's certain things that are acceptable. Christmas, I like Christmas cookies. There's certain things that I'll go out of my way to eat. When it comes to desserts, I can pass on almost all of them, but there's only a couple that really make me angry. One of them is Black Forest cake. You want to know why? Because no one asked you to ruin German chocolate cake with raspberry jam. If I wanted jam, I would make a PB&J sandwich. You get this shit out of my cake now, it should be considered an act of terrorism. But for Thanksgiving, pumpkin pie is an abomination. It not only doesn't belong indoors, it should be left outside, like the animals who feast on it. To me, a dessert is a thing that you make and then you give it to people and they eat it in the way. Like, I shouldn't have to make a dessert and then go find another dessert to put on top of it to make it palatable. The only way you can eat pumpkin pie is with whipped cream. And it shouldn't okay, then why did you make it this way in the first place? Why not just make it something that tastes good without a pound of Cool Whip on it? What? And everyone goes, oh, well, it's nostalgia. It's not. It's ridiculous. I mean, and God help you, if I see you out here raw dogging a piece of pumpkin pie, I'll ask you to leave. Or I'll leave. I don't care which. If I watch you just sit down and eat, I just assume, you can't sit at my table and eat a piece of pumpkin pie with no whipped cream on it. You have to eat it on the floor because you're an animal and that's where you belong. You don't belong up here with me at the table. I get militant about this. And every year, my protests fall on deaf ears.
I'm going to send you pictures of my kids eating pumpkin pie and the whipped cream. And I might do that myself. I might send you some of that stuff. So, yeah, you open up a can of worms, and I'm excited for this now. So,
guys,
you're a fucking monster.
Guys, for those of you out there, go ahead and tweet us at Rock Power Report. I want to know. I'm genuinely curious. What is your hot button Thanksgiving take? I'm interested. Everybody has one. Apparently, mine is unpopular, but I'll die on this hill. Although I've died on a lot dumber hills.
I don't even know what that cake you described was. I've never heard of that before.
I mean, it sounded good.
Black Forest cake?
Black Forest cake. I got. I was under the influence of the devil's lettuce once when I was in college, and I went to a Christmas dinner at the dining hall, and I saw that they had this massive chocolate cake. It looked like the thing from Matilda, the movie, like that giant chocolate cake. Yep. And I saved up, like, knowing I had the munchies, I saved up space. And I was like, oh no, I'm going to get that chocolate cake. And I took a bite and just caught like a face full of raspberry jam. And I wrote a front and back, like the comment cards they leave at the where you leave and you walk out, and they're like, how was our service? I wrote the whole front and back of it, just a scathing review of that cake. And they put it on the board because they assumed it was a joke, because they were like, no one would ever get this angry about cake. This is hilarious. You've never met me, people. I'm an animal. And with that in mind, just in time for the holidays, make sure you're stopping at Redlinski's Meats on Walden Avenue for all of your Thanksgiving-related needs. If it's down to the 11th hour, you still haven't gotten your buttered lamb, you still need some lazy pierogi, make sure you're checking out Redlinski's Meats. They're a Buffalo institution. They're located over on 1585 Walden Avenue in Cheektowaga. Guys, I'm not getting paid for this. They're just a butcher shop that I really like. And we like some of the people who work there, and they churn out some great stuff. So ahead of the holidays this year, Thanksgiving, Christmas, whatever you got going on, make sure you check out Redlinski's Meats. Now, Chris, I want to sink my teeth into something else. No more complaining about a holiday. It's time for the Week 13 preview. San Francisco 49ers at the Buffalo Bills. Time 8:20. Look at that. I nailed the actual kickoff time.
About time.
Place Ralph Wilson Stadium in Orchard Park, New York. The weather, who fucking knows? It could be a lake effect snowstorm. It might be nothing. Nobody can agree. And that's why weathermen should all be hung. And then the line on the game is the Bills -6.5, which is up 3.5 points from last week. It's an interesting topic you and I are going to talk about here in a few minutes. Now, Chris, the crew hasn't been announced yet. What I'm interested in, 506sports.com, who's in the 1 and 4 p.m. windows that we can look forward to seeing in the parking lot?
We'll let you know on Wednesday.
Oh, they don't put that out either?
No, not till Wednesday.
Guys, follow us on Twitter at RockPile Report. We will have the update for what we'll be watching in the tailgate parking lot. So ahead of this one, it's interesting. The Bills are coming off a week where they got to sit home, cool their heels, relax a little bit, and get healthy. We talked about that in our live show this week, and it's almost fitting that with that dynamic, as they're getting healthier, they're playing the 49ers, who are almost the antithesis of that. They are, and also the antithesis of what Buffalo was supposed to be this season. Like, it's the tale of two football teams. That it's almost like the movie Trading Places, except with not enough Dan Aykroyd for me. I don't know if they could find a way to weave him into this season. Chris, I know it's a movie reference you don't understand.
What was the movie?
Trading Places.
No. Is that Dan Aykroyd and John Candy?
No. It's Dan Aykroyd and
Eddie Murphy.
Eddie Murphy.
No.
Oh, you're missing a classic, sir.
I'm thinking of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Which is a Thanksgiving classic.
I didn't know that.
Of course you don't, because you don't watch movies. See, the Bills opened up this season playing second and maybe third fiddle sometimes, depending on what pundit you talk to. We weren't supposed to be in the running in the AFC. A lot of the conversation centered around how the Bills could become a wild card team. A lot of it was wrapped up in this idea that the Jets were favorites. I believe it was August 27th. I just talked on our AFC's roundup. Me and Scott Mason did like a kind of a...
I listened to it, yeah.
We did like a farewell to just kind of a...
You buried the Jets?
Well, what we did was
again?
We talked about how the hell did you guys go from being division favorites on August 27th to everyone in the building being fired 90 days later. It's one of the most precipitous falls from grace I've ever seen. But we were supposed to be also Rams.
Real quick, did you see the news about the 33rd team helping out Woody Johnson? Did you see all that stuff today?
Nothing makes me laugh harder than the concept that the Jets are going to turn to a guy who literally tried to like working for ESPN and Tannenbaum.
Yeah, Tannenbaum was a former GM of the Jets, right? Yeah, because he was during Rex Ryan. This is like Chris asking his cheating wife to help him find a new girlfriend.
I love this analogy. It's spot on. It's like, hey, you're garbage, and you were terrible at the thing you were hired to do. Can you help me pick someone else who's going to be good at it?
That's exactly, yeah. I mean, I know it's great publicity for a 33rd team. That's great for them, but it's like...
Well, yeah, you're not going to say no if you're Tannenbaum. And what, Rick Spielman, I think, is also involved?
He did okay with Minnesota, but still, the idea is like you're hiring somebody you fired before to help you fix the problem that you created. Like,
Woody's drunk, and this is going to be fun. Like, this is going to shave years. One of the things I talked to Scott Mason at Play Like a Jet about this past week in our AFC's Roundup was the idea that you guys are in your own drought. Like, you're in the drought. I know what one looks like. And your owner needs to start making smart choices. That's the only way out. If you're ever going to Andy Dufresne out of this, you got to start making one smart choice after the other. This seems like the opposite of that.
Do we think that they're going to exceed what the Bills, their drought? Do we think they're going to exceed the years?
Ooh, this is an interesting topic. You know what? I'm going to create a poll and I'm going to put it on Twitter tomorrow. And we're going to get the temperature of the fan base and try to figure out, and I want to see what Jets fans think.
Yeah.
How far does this go, Chris? Because 18 years is a long time, right?
I vote for you'll forget, and this will never be a poll.
I mean, whiskey, am I right? So here you have the Buffalo Bills, who are supposed to be third to second fiddle.
Yep.
And then you look at the San Francisco 49ers, who have all the pedigree in the world. They've made 2 out of the last 3 Super Bowls.
Something like that.
Is that right, Chris?
Yes, that sounds correct.
These were the odds for the NFC West starting training camp. San Francisco was minus 190. Everybody else was plus money. The Rams were plus 330. The Seahawks were plus 700. And the Cardinals were plus 1,300. And so it's hilarious if you take a look at where each of these teams are right now today. Like, the Bills might already have the division locked up at kickoff, depending on how things go. That's embarrassing.
It's fantastic, but it's embarrassing for the rest of the AFC East.
Meanwhile, the 49ers are closing in on the concept of mathematical elimination from the wild card seeding. Like, they're very rapidly approaching a place where if they don't win their division, okay, so let's see, they lost the Super Bowl in 2019. Okay, so then they lost the conference finals 2 years in a row, and then they lost the Super Bowl in 2023. All right, so they've been in at least NFC title game contention 1, 2, 3, 4 out of the last 6 years.
They're just repeating their last Super Bowl appearance where you missed the playoffs altogether the following year.
Yeah.
They're on that track.
That's actually really interesting. I wonder if there's any science to that.
Injuries?
Well, that's it. It's probably injury related. And it's probably because of the wear and tear after you get the same players who have played so many extra games year over year.
Look who their leading passer was in 2020.
2020, their leading passer was Nick Mullins. Holy shit. You know what? That was the year that you guys made me drink all those Molson Ices. That was the year where I agreed when the Bills played the 49ers that I would stop drinking Molson Ices when the Bills stopped scoring. And the final score was 34-24. And I think if you look, in the second quarter, we scored 17 points and it just never stopped. It just didn't stop.
I think that might have been the game where I ran to the 7-Eleven around the corner and got more Molson Ice. And I brought it back within the commercial break. I had left right before they went to cut to commercial, and I was back right before they cut back to the game.
So I guess that's a point, though, I want you all to let marinate for a second. All of the analysts, right, the pundits, the odds makers in Vegas, everybody who believes that they can math their way to figuring out who is and who isn't a good football team said, well, the Bills are going to suck and the 49ers are obviously going to cruise this year because why wouldn't they? I mean, podcasters, we do it sometimes. We do. And even people who purport to be smarter than us doing this sometimes get caught up doing it. But you know what you can't math and you can't prognosticate and you can't forecast is chemistry, culture, and just guts. Like Bear Bryant, Paul the Bear Bryant, one of the famed Alabama head coaches, probably one of the most famous head coaches in all of NCAA history. He had a quote that there's no substitute for guts. There isn't. You either have it or you don't, and you find out very quickly who has it and who doesn't. That person can't manufacture it. And that's what this 2024 Bills team is. It's just coaches who have a good idea of what they want to do and a bunch of players who maybe don't have the most talent in the world, but they've got balls. And they go out there and they put them on the line every single game. You know, you can't math a Sean McDermott defense to say like, oh, well, they're going to lose this many games. How do you know that? His defense will go out there missing players, missing stars. Doesn't matter. They'll turn in an A1 performance. Why? Because that's what they do. Christian Benford misses a game, and guess what happens? Kyle Elam comes in off the bench, has a great day. It's just, this is what this team is. And you can't calculate the impact of a Josh Allen. Like, he's the NFL's biggest long shot in terms of pedigree and odds to hit the NFL like a meteor, like he has, of all time. Chris, find me a better player who, like, some teams didn't think were draftable, and now look at where he is in terms of, like, his talent on the field. I don't know that there's been a bigger disparity of any player I've heard of.
Maurice Claret.
So we come out of our bye week having outperformed every expectation so far this season, and the 49ers are just a gross disappointment. There's reasons for that, which we're going to get into, but there's a whole bunch of other mathematical and analytical disparities if you want to talk about them. Like, the San Francisco defense has only given up one 300-yard passing game all year. The Bills are the third highest scoring team in football, and we only have a single 300-yard passing game to our credit.
Remember when that was a thing for Josh Allen he couldn't do? And it's like,
I lost a Seagram's bet to him. Yep. 2020 opening game against the Jets. He goes, we're in the middle of the late third. And he goes, do you think Josh can get it to 300? I go, absolutely not.
I think it was a pregame.
And it's not even, no, it was mid-game. And it wasn't even because I didn't think he could keep it going. It's because, to me, I'm like, history will outweigh the fact. The history of the Buffalo Bills says Josh Allen can't throw a 300-yard game. He can't.
Yeah.
312.
312. Buffalo is 8th in fourth quarter scoring. Look at these stats. San Francisco is 17th. Buffalo is 8th in fourth quarter scoring defense. San Francisco is 27th.
That's a pretty bad mismatch.
And that was before yesterday's result got taken into account. Mm-hmm. That's a mess. And what it points to is that the San Francisco 49ers, whether it's because of injury, just coaching, whether it's the churn on the roster, they have a real failure to execute in critical moments and come up with clutch plays. We're used to them making those things. You know, against Green Bay, they had multiple opportunities to turn the game around. Balls hitting defensive backs in the hands, and they just don't intercept it. This has been the story of their season. And now they have just an 18% chance to make the playoffs. Like, that's it. The wild card is looking like it's a long shot, if it's even possible anymore. Essentially, they're going to have to win the NFC West. They're closing in on territory where they will have to win the division if they want to make the playoffs. Like, if you want to go ahead and, Chris, give it a go. Throw up the NFL playoff odds just to fact check me on this, but I'm pretty sure they're close to being left on the outside looking in.
What outlet do you want?
NFL.com. Doesn't matter. NFL.com. Just go to the playoff picture and let's see it. So as we look at this, though, one of the biggest factors and one of the things that makes trying to prognosticate how this game goes and what the X's and O's are, like, you can sit here and dissect, I could give you a film dissection if I was so inclined. We could get the all 22 and we could tell you, here's where all of these other teams have made their hay. The problem with the 49ers right now is you don't know what team you're going to play because you don't know who's going to be on the friggin' field. And that's a problem. And it's one of the 49ers' biggest issues. It's one of their biggest hurdles. Like, here we are. NFC bubble teams, scroll down. Okay. playoff percentage of the 49ers yesterday before their loss. I believe this is from yesterday because right now they're 5-6. So that would be 31%. They're down to 18. Yeah. So now they're at 18%. Chris, if you go to the playoff picture, like if you just go to NFL.com, not the article, just NFL.com, you could just Google it. This is way faster. What you're doing is so slow.
You said it was on NFL.com. I'm at NFL.com.
Google
Direct me, nerd.
Google NFL.com space playoff bracket. Playoff picture. Down. Bang. Done. Profit. All right, here we go. So just keep scrolling because we got to keep going down to try to find our boys. They're currently 11th in the NFC. Okay. Their playoff probability is now down to 15% from yesterday's 18. And now you look at it, they're 5-6. They're tied in record with the Rams, but they're behind the Seahawks. They have the loss to the Seahawks, so that adds a game and a half back. The Cardinals are leading the division at 6-5. They're just a game ahead of them, but it's a game.
Seattle's in first.
What'd you say?
Seattle's in first.
So now they're behind, but they're going to have to leapfrog multiple teams in order to make a run at this.
Well, everybody in the West is it's one game. You're either 6-5 or 5-6.
And so there's a part of you, if you look at the 49ers' next slate of games, it's not a cakewalk. Like, if you look at what they have coming down the docket, the Bills game all of a sudden starts to look like, between us and the Bears, two of their most winnable games left on their schedule, just based on the way they're playing and the overall team health. They've got us, the Bears, the Rams again, at Miami, who Miami's been on a tear. Then they have to go then they play Detroit, and then they are at the Cardinals in a game that might decide the division.
That's not good. I mean, it just gets harder and harder. I mean, Chicago is, and
again,
that's probably the only one that's going to win.
Chicago's in the toilet.
And so this happens because they're so injured, and they just don't have the consistency from one week to the next that you're used to seeing out of this football team. You know, we can all agree that Kyle Shanahan is a good coach. The problem is, how do you make, like, you can only make water out of wine so many times. If you're Rumpelstiltskin, what is it? Straw into gold was his whole thing?
I can't remember. It's been, my kids haven't gotten to that one yet.
I don't know. What I do know is that you have to understand their injuries to really understand what it is you might see this weekend against the Buffalo Bills. And so with that in mind, I want to start with this conversation about your boy, Jeff Mueller, who you turned me on to.
Yep. He's a good guy.
Another NFL doc on Twitter who kind of talks about injuries and injury-related stuff. And he had a really hilarious analysis of how badly San Francisco games the injury report, as evidenced by the fact that their team's own social media handle committed a giant faux pas. In warm-ups, pregame, they're taking photos of guys and tweeting it out, being like, "Oh, we're out here. We're out here. We're getting ready." And the whole world noticed that Brandon Allen, the quarterback who was stepping in for an injured Brock Purdy, had a giant, very noticeable cast, like a brace, on his middle finger, his left hand. Nowhere has this guy ever appeared on an injury report this season. So why does he have a brace on his hand? Well, then, as people start talking about it, they go, well, actually, Brandon Allen broke his finger in practice like 2 days ago. Or not 2 weeks, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So 2 weeks ago, this guy broke his finger in practice. The 49ers were like, nah, we're not going to say anything about that. You're starting quarterback. We're not going to tell anybody about this. It clearly didn't give them a competitive advantage.
No.
What is a team's incentive, Kyle, from your perspective, to lie about an injury like that that's very visible?
I don't know. Because, I mean, these teams are looking at the film. They're seeing what's going on. Like, if I can tell what bracing is on a guy, what, where he's limited, the splint on his finger, like, they're going to know everything that's going on with all this stuff. So, like, to try to hide it, maybe the severity they could try hiding it, but it just doesn't make sense why you necessarily hide it. They have to put this stuff on the injury report if they're being treated for it. So even if he broke the finger and then didn't really need treatment, like something still happened at some point where, hey, this happened. Even if he's practicing in full, it still needs to be on there. So I don't know why they have to hide it, but there's, I don't want to say the conspiracy, but it's just I'm sure there's some way of, hey, if we don't talk about it, well, they're not going to notice it. And it's just like, okay, maybe that's the case, but I feel like these teams are too smart not to at least look up at that stuff, because that guy's scouting out ahead and they start noticing, hey, different things. And you're not going to notice every single injury. You're not going to notice every single thing. But I guess if you don't draw attention to it, you're not going to go looking for it either.
I mean, it's a hand. People are going to see your hands. You're a fucking quarterback.
Normally, it wouldn't be a big issue, and I'd be like, okay, he's a righty. What does it matter? But we saw Josh Allen on the injury report for the first 10 weeks of the season because he injured his left hand week 1. That really hasn't affected him too much other than like maybe the second and third game.
Sure.
But like that's the thing. Like anytime that stuff is an injury, you have to be reporting it to a certain extent if they're getting treatment or if it's going to affect their ability to practice.
It's hilarious chicanery. And I love that it's just their team that does this to the degree that they do, because also it doesn't seem to be helping them. It's not giving you a competitive advantage in these games. And so in this way, we got to talk about some of the major injuries that are going to shape what this contest might look like. Now, Brock Purdy and his shoulder injury is the one getting all the press, and deservedly so. ESPN reported that he did some light throwing today and didn't have any issues. It's a crazy thing when you hear that the Friday, like, hey, our starting quarterback took a dive into trying to reach out for a touchdown last week and then didn't practice all week. And then they promised everybody, hey, guys, don't worry, he's going to throw on Friday. He comes out, he throws for about 3.5 minutes and all of a sudden pulls up. And then the journalists, Greg Cohn, does everybody hate that? Grant Cohn, does everybody hate that guy in San Francisco?
It seems like it. I know players do. It just seems like everybody I talk to, it's like, love him or hate him. My guy, Jeff, it was like, yeah, you might love him or hate him, but he's on it about the injury stuff. It's like, okay, that's fine. But like, I have the push notification for him so I can catch anything he's saying. He's already insufferable. I'm like, how does anybody do what he's doing? He seems to hate the team that he's covering. And I don't know if that's like his shtick or like whatever, but like.
Well, do you mean like Jerry Sullivan?
No, Jerry at least had some good points. This guy seems like he just outright hates him. He's like, well, Brent Allen's going to play. That means he's going to lose. I'm like, Jerry would at least try to look at it more objectively and try to have a decent view. This guy just like outright, there's a vitriol of the 49ers. I'm like, go cover. We don't need you to be a fanboy, but can you at least be a little more neutral about this shit rather than just be so.
There is that, right?
Like, I can't think of everybody in the Buffalo media that has such vitriol for the own team. Like, they're either pretty neutral, some might fanboy, but like nobody does it to that level. Like,
so guys, go seek out Grant Cohn if you're looking for reasons to feel better about this week's matchup. Just go read his tweets leading up to the game. But so he tweeted out, and then he posted a video and said, listen, I'm there at practice. They pulled him off the field. He was talking to trainers, and then he went right back down the tunnel and never came back. And then they immediately ruled him out the next morning on Saturday. Said,
after doing an MRI and
did an MRI. Here's the thing that concerns me. They thought he was good enough to practice that day. So after a week of sitting out, he's fine. He's fine. Hey, guys, he's fine. He's not throwing. MRI. Boom, out. And then they come back and say, okay, he's going to kind of do some light things and he's going to, he's not going to put any torque on it. And then I hear things, you had tweeted about it, that now his elbow might also be of some concern. How hurt is Brock Purdy?
I mean, we don't really fully know. From what I was gathering before, was that he started some tiredness, soreness in the elbow, and he had the UCL injury 2 years ago. And then he started having the shoulder stuff, and the shoulder stuff happened from the previous game. And from what I understood was this guy caught the 49ers off guard because they're like, okay, soreness, he played a football game. Like, these guys throw around. They couldn't really pinpoint any plays, at least they're not publicly saying which play. Shanahan said that, hey, I don't think that we know which play what happened. And then it's like, okay, that's fine. And then he starts throwing around, realizing it's just tightened up on him and it's not getting any better. And then say, hey, let's go get this image further. And we don't know the exact details if it's rotator cuff, if it's some type of a small labrum tear, if it's something else entirely altogether. But it's just not great when, they don't. They know what the full picture is. They're not going to tell us for obvious reasons, but it did seem like it kind of caught them off guard a little bit because soreness, okay, Josh Allen, I'm sure, has soreness every day. I'm sure, Taron Johnson has soreness every day, but is this going to cause, impaired function? And it seemed like it was.
Yeah. And that's the thing. If you're looking at a quarterback, it's your throwing shoulder. The spectrum of results is huge because you have some guys who injure their throwing shoulder and they're back within a week. And then you see some guys where it seems innocuous and all of a sudden they're like, oh, well, like it seems innocuous and all of a sudden they're not playing again for an 9 week span. Like I'm trying to think of some recent examples.
Deshaun Watson, he broke his glenoid in his scapula, and he finished playing through the injury or played through the quarter and realized something was wrong, and they pulled him off. And it's like he played better with that broken area of his scapula, and, but like he's playing through all this stuff.
Better with a broken shoulder.
I'm just trying to think who else. I know like Baker Mayfield hurt. He messed up his non-throwing shoulder pretty bad when he was in Cleveland. I know Josh Allen played through an AC joint sprain a few years ago. There's been different guys that have done different things that just based off of what they can tolerate and kind of get through. And then,
well, sure. I mean, Anthony Richardson last year had an AC joint issue and then had to have surgery for it,
which is pretty rare.
Yeah, like that's a significant injury. But at the time, they were like, "He's week to week. Yeah, it'll be fine."
Yep.
Oh wait, it won't be fine. He's on IR. So it's going to be interesting to see how this week unfolds and obviously what their offense looks like. He's a huge component of that because if it's Brandon Allen, this 6.5 point line, and this is where I ask, a 3.5 point jump, Chris, by Vegas in a game like this, that's not normal.
It's only happening if there's something wrong with the quarterback.
And so this gives me a feeling that perhaps there's information out there that we're not aware of, that the team is still trying to obfuscate, which they've proven they're capable of doing, but that maybe Vegas is called word to something. Because moving a game a point or two, you could do that for weather. You know, if you said, hey, the weather's going to be bad and we think that Buffalo's more built to play in the weather than this, you move it 1.5 points. To move it 3.5 points in a given direction in the span of 72 hours? That means that you know something. And so I wonder what it is the 49ers might be hiding from all of us. I mean, you'll never know, but it'll be interesting. Like, all eyes need to be glued on 49ers practice this week. Nick Bosa, their star pass rusher,
voted for Trump.
Yeah, and got in trouble for it. Like, got in trouble for showing up, or was it Kittle? Who was it who showed up with the hat?
It was Bosa.
Bosa? Yeah, that doesn't shock me. Bosa with an oblique injury?
Correct.
And here's the question. I think back to a guy that I knew who had like core muscle, oblique issue.
Where is your oblique?
On the sides of your abdomen.
So like here, Chris.
Yeah.
You know, but ours are both padded well enough. I don't think
I'm going to take a shot, say that Bosa hurt himself from laughing at Kamala so hard that she fucking lost.
So this is we're trying to have a football podcast. So here's what I think about this. I think back to Stephon Diggs playing through the 2020 playoffs.
Yep, he had the partially torn oblique. And
yep, he had
even last year there was some stuff he had going on too.
So it is possible to play a very physical position with these sorts of injuries. Nick Bosa strikes me as a really tough guy. And so with it in mind, I don't know if it's so much more pain management at this point. If they're holding him out of games, it must be pretty severe, right?
It is. And the issue he has is he had the hip pointer oblique injury, and the hip pointer is basically where the top of the hips, you feel it on the outside, even despite some padding, the fat padding, obviously, you can still hit that area, and the crest of that iliac crest where you hit becomes very painful. Well, the obliques connect there. And so if you have, a painful contusion there, and then you add in the oblique where you're turning and twisting, you just add on to stuff just being limited. So he had that on the right, it happened 2 weeks prior, and then he injures it the left side this past week there. So like, I don't see how he plays, because it's like you're still working through the previous one, and you go hurt the other one. I don't see how he goes, which would be a great thing for one less face being Josh Allen's face, but just.
Well,
so I don't know if one is more severe than the other. I would think the left side would be more acute because it happened more recently. But like, you're trying to work through one, and now you can't really twist or rotate, and you can't even take any hits to the side because he's going to get hit, and
doing the rehab becomes harder because you have an injury to one of the muscle groups that you're looking to kind of lean on.
And sometimes you just need to rest and just let things calm down a little bit there.
Yeah. And one of the things that I find interesting about this conversation is it opens the door to what the Bills could get away with here. Because, as we're going to talk about in tonight's live show, the injury to Spencer Brown, depending on how Nick Bosa is trending, might dictate how you prepare for this game and how cautious you are with Spencer Brown.
Yep.
Because Ryan Vandermark acquitted himself pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you know that you're not going to have a great white shark out there at full capacity for the San Francisco 49ers and Nick Bosa, you could, as a coach, probably talk yourself into getting away with another week of Vandermark. And
maybe. I mean, you got Leonard Floyd who could flip over the other side.
Sure.
I don't want Leonard Floyd.
No, I don't love that, but I'll say this. I don't dislike the option. And then Trent Williams, who is arguably one of the toughest guys in the NFL. If you look at him over the course of his career, I mean, this is a guy who had to fight his own team to get a proper injury diagnosis. And again, no shocker, he played for the Commanders, the Redskins at the time, owned by one of the biggest pieces of shit on earth. They kept telling him he was fine, and he's like, I'm not. And so they filed.
He had freaking cancer on his head.
The dude had cancer. And he kept filing grievances, and the team doctors are like, you're fine. You're fine. Here, Chris, old school style. We'll put some leeches on you, and we'll send you back out there. You'll be good. You can play. He's got an ankle injury. And before we started the show, you and I were watching some video of him kind of moving around at practice, some videos of him limping pretty heavily. When you see that type of injury for a guy that big, and then seeing that it's his, you figure he's a left tackle. And knowing your post leg, and then there's the leg that you kick slide with. When you see where he's injured and how he's injured, how do you perceive Trent Williams ahead of this game?
It looked like the left ankle was the affected ankle, and being left tackle, that's going to be the kick slide leg. And that's the reason why Spencer Brown didn't play last week, because he injured his right ankle. He's playing right tackle. So it looked like he had injured it 2 weeks prior against the Tampa Bay, because he was questionable the next week and played. And I didn't see video that he aggravated it against Seattle, but obviously it was still pretty significant. So even if he does somehow play against the Bills on Sunday Night Football, you got to factor in weather because it might be snowing. And then also, too, that's his kick side leg. Does he have the ability to get back? He's played through a lot of these injuries before. If you Google, or not Google, but go on Twitter and do Trent Williams ankle, you're going to find all sorts of instances where he's injured his ankle. But I've seen times where he's injured his right ankle and it's been the inside, and you can kind of get away with that more. But if it's the outside, it's going to be trouble. I want to bet that Trent Williams can still match up 50% ankle against most people, defensive ends, and still hold his own there. But when you're playing in maybe potentially poor footing, and then his age and everything else like that, it's like maybe you just set him out and keep him out for another week just to keep him healthy, because that stretch, outside of Chicago is going to be rough. So I'd rather say, hey, maybe, you chalk up to a non-conference opponent loss and then focus on, your Chicago, Los Angeles, Detroit, Arizona, and make sure he's healthy for that in case you can make a run and get to playoffs.
That's not bad logic. I don't hate that idea. And I think the crazy thing is that they are still, there's a slim chance, but it exists because the 49ers are not as bad as the team we saw in Green Bay this last weekend. That was a horror show. Chris, that was their worst game since 2018. Their worst loss.
That makes sense.
So it looks terrible if you want to just put a microscope on it, but if you take a look at the big picture, the Bills have had these. Hell, we got railroaded by Baltimore week 4, and everyone thought the sky was falling. And then what did we do the following week? We went out and we lost a game that our quarterback missed 21 throws.
Yeah.
21 throws. And we still were in it in the final minute. And then we just righted the ship and went on a tear. And it's all right, see, this isn't, the sky hasn't fallen. The 49ers could potentially be in the same spot. They just have to get well. But at the same time, for them to match up against Buffalo, I don't know. Because some of their major tenets of their failure seem to fall along lines and kind of explain who they are as a football team in ways that the Bills should be able to exploit, right? Like, if I want to look at it, one of the things, Chris, in the trenches, their team has not been up to the standard that the 49ers have set over the last 6 seasons that's seen them play in Super Bowls and seen them play in conference title games. Their front seven on defense hasn't had the physicality that you're used to seeing from them. Now, some of that might be attributed to the losses they've sustained. You know, nobody liked Javon Kinlaw. Everyone thought that was he didn't work out there, and he ended up leaving. He fought Grant Cohn. Did you see that he went on Grant Cohn's live stream?
No, I didn't see this.
Oh, guys, that's a great interaction. If you want to Google Grant Cohn, Javon Kinlaw, and just watch it, because it's him catching up with Grant for talking shit about him in the media. Just one-on-one in person. But also the fact that they decided to depart with Eric Armstead. And then a couple of years ago, they had DeForest Buckner, and they just kind of unceremoniously got rid of him. Like, they've treated the defensive line outside of Nick Bosa as if they're highly replaceable players, and they're not. Like, I think they're finding out, like, hey, we probably could have used a few of these big, impactful bodies. And so it's one of the most disappointingly disparate parts of the entire equation here if you're a 49ers fan, because you're used to watching your team win the trenches, and they're just not doing it anymore. Their offensive line commits a lot of unforced errors. Every single one of them was on display against Green Bay. I mean, you've got a guy named Puny. He leads like multiple penalties against in this game, but he leads the team in offense. Like, he leads the offensive line in penalties absorbed. And they're usually just, when he does it, it's that thing of like, we make fun of the Houston Texans because we're like, how many more touchdowns can you take away from Nico Collins with a shitty hold? Or like, oh, illegal man downfield. Why is that offensive lineman down there? That's Puny.
And he's dealing with a shoulder injury, according to reports today.
So he's not even healthy.
No. You look at the front five there.
Yeah.
You got Trent Williams, like we talked about.
Yep.
Aaron Banks suffering concussion on Sunday. And then Dominic Puny, he has a shoulder injury. So that leaves Colton McKivitz, who I've never heard of before. And we'll get to Jake Brendel. It's not great to see, you know. And they're hoping that John Feliciano will come back, and his knee injury isn't responding. He's talking about maybe this might be it for him. So it's like they'd have no depth, and the whole front five is not looking good for them so far.
Wouldn't it be funny after all the shit John Feliciano talked on his way out of town to watch him come back here and just get dog walked in just a laugher of a game?
That's probably why his knee wasn't responding. He's like, man, I have to talk too much shit. I can't back it up, man.
I can't carry the load.
No, he couldn't. Can you imagine Josh Allen getting out there? He just tear him apart.
Just tear him up.
Yeah.
What I love about their offensive line is they've been unable, like, first of all, they shouldn't be playing Christian McCaffrey. I have him in fantasy. I have a I directly benefit from his presence on a football field. And I can tell you, watching him play, he has no burst. He's missing the spark that he used to have as an athlete, which is what you would expect from a guy who was rumored to have double Achilles problems, right?
Yep.
Like, how crazy is it that he had to fly overseas to get like special treatment on his Achilles? Like, isn't that a point where you have, being a running back who's accomplished what he's accomplished, multiple conference title rings, maybe it's time to just hang it up before you tear one of these things, right?
I mean, that's why he was kept out so long, so he could heal up. I mean, he went over to Germany. There was other stuff on this earlier, but I can't remember it off the top of my head, so I'm not going to go into great detail. But he went over there because basically they could do things over there in Germany that they can't do over here because FDA and whatnot. So he's going to go where the money, everything else.
Do you know how sketchy that sounds?
Well, I love it.
Hey, you know what it reminds me of is Rocky IV, where they're like, hey, you're going to come box this giant Russian boxing machine of ours. Meanwhile, we're going to hook him up to a bunch of machines and pump him full of steroids.
It's something along the lines of just some of the different techniques they can do with the injections in the blood, not necessarily EPO, but
no, basically what they're doing is they're giving him the the Lance Armstrong?
Kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, Kobe Bryant did it, and Peyton Manning, I think, went over there. Like they just know, hey, we can't get this treatment over here legally, so we have to go elsewhere to get that. But just
So what I'm assuming is his hairline's going to recede until his forehead is gigantic.
Maybe. I mean,
because that's what happened to both of those guys. What I do know is he does not look like the rust. Like, he's very rusty. as a running back.
I mean, that's not surprising. He missed, 10 games? It's going to take some time to get back up to speed there.
And then just on his longest catch of the day, the one play where he could probably provide a little bit of spark, he fumbled the ball. Now, that's a very uncharacteristic play, and it shows that he's just not the guy. Like, he's not back to where he should be.
No.
But you've seen that time and time and time again.
It takes time to get
Von
guys
Miller
back up.
last year coming back off the ACL. Just because you can be out there doesn't mean you're going to be good. And so, or explosive, I should say. Like, you don't have any explosion, and that's what we're seeing. I mean, 31 yards and 11 carries.
That's not good.
That's terrible. But also part of it is his offensive line's not giving him any creases.
Real quick on CMC there, that douche Grant Cohn, he said 49ers points per game with CMC this year, 16.7. 49ers points per game without CMC this year, 26.3. Now, I know that's only, 2 games where they've played, but there's a significant difference when you try to, funnel him the ball versus when you try to get other guys.
Well, they're trying to knock the rust off because they're like, listen, this is the reason that this whole offensive thing is going to start working again. With an injured quarterback and everything else, it's going to be because CMC capes up and saves the day. So we got to knock all this rust off, and we're going to keep giving him the ball because eventually he'll get back.
Yeah.
You can't feed Jordan Mason and Isaac
Guerendo,
who was a Matt Waldman favorite this past offseason.
And taking the next pick after Ray Davis.
Yep. And I was very upset about that. Not anymore, but I was at the time. But it was a thing where this is their philosophy. And so I wouldn't be shocked if on Sunday when they play Buffalo, they're going to give CMC maybe 17, 18, 19 touches. Don't expect him to be the guy that he has been. And even if it's not working, they're not going to deviate course. They're going to continue doing it because they're not playing for this week. They're trying to knock the rust off him so that in the next game against an NFC opponent, they can go out there and have him like he's that much closer in their minds to being useful. It also doesn't help that the offensive line sucks at creating creases. And also, like, pass protection has been a problem. Trent Williams backup, not great. Starting center Jake Brendel, 38th among qualifying centers in pass block win rate and just overall PFF blocking grade. There are backups, multiple backup centers who have had enough starts to qualify, who have had better performances than the starting center for the 49ers. That's an embarrassment because the offensive line used to be a place of strength. Chris, if you want to throw the hour lads for the 49ers up there on the TV for us, one of the things that I look at is
38th have how many?
38th out of,
I mean, like you said, among qualifying, like what's the total?
I want to say that the total that qualified was somewhere around 46.
Okay, so it's not like it's 38 out of 40, which would make it even worse.
No, yeah, that would make it even worse. There are still guys worse, but not many who are still getting reps. Most of those guys got benched as soon as the starter came back.
Yep.
So with that in mind, you look at what they were supposed to be. John Feliciano being at guard. Like now they've got Aaron Banks, Dominic Puni, he's a rookie.
Okay.
He's a rookie. So you wonder why he's struggling. It's because, hey, you put me next to a struggling center. And oh, by the way, at tackle, Colton McKivitz. He's a 5th-round draft pick he's average. He's not anything special. So that whole side of the line is a liability. And then, Chris, if you scroll up a little bit, go back to this. Trent Williams, if he's out, Jalen Moore, you've got 2 draft picks, not day one from the 2021 draft. What's your upshot there? This line is a shell of what we're used to seeing from them. And then if you flip to the other side, now scroll down a little bit, Chris, so we can see the defense. Take a look at this depth chart without Nick Bosa. And Yader Gross-Matos has missed a lot of games due to injury. Like what I think I saw on PFF, he's only played in 4 games this year.
I'm not sure.
So he just played his 4th game of the year, but the pass rush is lacking without Bosa. And even with Bosa and Floyd in the games, they've had their flaws. Like some of it's rooted in play calling. Against Green Bay, they were 1 of 6 on 3rd down stops well into the 2nd quarter because they refused to blitz or put heat on Jordan Love. They were just like, oh, our coverage unit's going to be reliable. And it was not. Part of that is because they've been playing without cornerback Charvarius Ward, who was supposed to be their CB1. Now, he's not available for reasons that you and I talked about.
Yep.
Guys, Chris, can I have my single for a second? there are some things you go through in life that I feel, and this is where I kind of like, I love NFL fans. I love being a fan of this game. And I love the fact that social media gives everybody the ability to communicate about these things. But it forgets that people are garbage. Shavarius Ward hasn't been available for the San Francisco 49ers because he had a child who passed away. And even though some of it sounds like from his commentary was expected, it's still jarring to anybody who has a child. Like you see that and it hits you. Like they're just people, right? They're not automatons. This isn't Madden. This stuff matters. That guy's a human being. He lost a daughter about a month ago, and he hasn't played football since. And I can't find it in me to blame him whatsoever. Except a lot of 49ers fans have. And that bothers me. Like it bugs me. You and I were talking about this. It bothers me to my core that, like, listen, this is a game. We're talking about people's lives. So when people go, oh, well, it's been 3 games, he needs to get his ass back out there. I might never go outside again. Like, I don't know if I'll leave my house. You want to talk about I'm supposed to go out into an environment that requires 100% of my focus when I don't have it to give. It's one of the barbaric parts of this game that I don't love.
Some people could channel that stuff and really make it great. Like, I think we all remember Brett Favre when his dad died, but his dad was old and he kind of knew it. To some extent, he knew it was coming. And sometimes you kind of channel all that grief into performance. But like, I don't know any parent that could take what happened to their kid. Like, I read this stuff as a father of 3 and I just like, fuck. Like
it wrecks you because
it doesn't even directly happen to me. I can't imagine what that feels like being a parent who's lost a child. So for somebody to say that, hey, get out there and play, fuck you.
Exactly. And that's where I start to get with not just this team with their avoidance of the reporting rules, but also their fan base. Like some of your like there's I don't know. Chris, do you want to call it spoiled? Like almost like they have a feeling of entitlement. We're like, well, our team needs to be good because we've always been good. And if this terrible thing, life-alteringly terrible thing happened to you, you need to just suck it up for my enjoyment. That makes you sound like a real piece of shit, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It bothers the hell out of me. And I hate it. I hate it. And I hope we don't see him this week. Not for competitive reasons, but because I don't know that it's like if it serves him and he needs to be out there and you're ready, go do it, man.
Yeah.
Good for you. I'll root for you. I'll actively be rooting for you against my own team because as a human being, that's a spot that I would never want to be in. And if he doesn't play again this season, I could absolutely see it. I could absolutely see how you find your way there. It's crazy. And behind him, it hasn't gone well. No. Right. In his absence, they've had to start Ricardo Green, who's a rookie. Right. They took him in the 2nd round this year.
And he suffered injury on Sunday, a neck injury.
And he got hurt, of course he did.
Yep.
Against Seattle, he wasn't great. 7 of 8, 79 yards, 4 first downs given up. He wasn't great against Green Bay this week. You go back, Demondre Lenoir, the only other like veteran cornerback.
And also suffered an injury this week. Leg injury. He wasn't on the reports today, but he did go down and did see the reports about that.
These guys,
leg and knee injury.
These guys have gotten roasted, and also they're hurt. So now, like, you don't have your premier pass rusher. You don't have a ton of defensive line depth. You don't have cornerback depth. Dre Greenlaw they still haven't opened his practice window.
They're doing it this week.
Are they?
Yeah.
Okay. Dre Greenlaw, like his absence from the roster has been felt because he's a very physical downhill linebacker. They put in this guy Bethune, who was at least noticeable.
And he's on injured reserve.
Chris, they've got no jobs. They've got no food. Their pets' heads are falling off. The 49ers are an absolute disaster. And I think that part of it, too, what they suffer from is pedigree affecting their focus. This is a 49ers team that's known success, and they're being just spoon-fed adversity this season in a time when they're not really used to it. Like, this isn't a team that's had to overcome a ton of adversity.
They're kind of like the Bills last year where they showed up and expected to win, which you want that in any team, any individual where you expect to win. But as soon as shit starts hitting the fan, how do you respond? And, you know, between the injuries and then just them thinking, hey, we're the best guys out there and realize they can't do it, that's where things really, really gotten poorly for them.
And nothing underscores this like division or this like kind of fracturing of who we see ourselves as more so than an event that took place a couple weeks ago where Tabor Pepper, who's the long snapper for the San Francisco 49ers, got punched in the face by Deebo Samuel on the sideline when he tried to intervene between Deebo Samuel berating their kicker, Jake Moody, who had missed a field goal. Like, it was his third missed field goal of the day, and he punches Tabor Pepper in the face. And again, if they went on to win, they won the game. But also, Chris, when's the last time? Like, can you picture a member of the Bills offensive staff raising a hand to Reed Ferguson?
No.
Can you picture a world where one of these guys grips up Tyler Bass and screams at him on the sideline in front of everybody?
Yes. Based on you.
Oh, yeah, sure. Me, if I was down there. But, Kyle, can you envision a world where that happens?
No, because I think Reed would hold his own, and I think everybody else will jump in and start taking care of that player. And hopefully it wouldn't break out into the big thing, but
also it wouldn't happen.
No, it wouldn't.
The culture of this team is one of personal accountability, but also support. They stand up for each other because they've been through a lot of adversity, and they've figured out how to pull together and be a team no matter what's getting thrown at them. You see the rare cracks in that. The Stephon Diggs stuff during the Bengals game. Where's Stephon Diggs now?
And reserve.
And look at this team moving on without him seamlessly.
Exactly.
Because they found guys to fill those gaps who understood. This is the job. We play for each other. Not just with, but for each other. You never see anything like this in Buffalo. And so in that way, like, there's a part of me that sees the San Francisco 49ers and sees a group who believed that the logo on their helmet and the success they've had over the last half decade just kind of warranted them victories. Like, oh, we're the 49ers. Of course Tampa Bay should lay down and just give us the game. And then here they are, losing, the fourth place in their own division?
Yep. I got two things off this, a comment and then a question here.
Yep.
So, comment, Jake Moody, he suffered a high ankle sprain trying to make a tackle on special teams a few weeks ago. The thought was he was going to go on injured reserve. He didn't, but he was ruled out the previous game against Tampa Bay, against Dallas. So you would think Deebo would be like, hey, this guy's hurt. He shouldn't be kicking, but he would think that, okay, he's missing the kicks because he's not fully healthy. Why are you punching the long snapper? I know he was getting in the middle of it, but it's like, come on, you have some context that everybody knows. Why are you getting pissed off at the thing? It's just, you don't need to be doing that. And then secondly, I don't know if either of you talked to Reed about this, but like, I know we just talked about if anybody went after Reed, but like, did any of you ask what Reed would do or what he thought of the situation? Or, I mean, I didn't ask him, but I thought maybe.
Well, here's what I will say. Reed, if you're out there, somebody clip this and send it to Reed. Reed's moniker, his nickname, if you will, is Mr. Nice. I still, having been friends with him for this long, have never heard him utter a single instance of profanity. The boy doesn't cuss. So if he doesn't cuss, can you picture him like being malicious to a teammate in an environment like that? Absolutely not. He's not wired like that. Now, what I will say is that there was a Jets-Bills game where the Bills clinched the division.
I do remember this.
I believe it was the third consecutive division title we had clinched. My dad, the Bills punt. And I'm like talking to people standing around us in the stands. My dad's there, and all of a sudden my dad kind of punches me on the shoulder and goes, "Hey, isn't that your boy, Reed?" And he points, and I just see a cloud of snow and fists flying, and there's two guys just rolling around, probably 40 yards behind everybody else, back at the line of scrimmage. And of course, they throw flags. They're like, all right, unsportsmanlike, unnecessary roughness on both players. We repunt. We're going to re-kick this thing. And I'm yelling because as soon as it dawns on me what's going on, I'm like, woo! Reed's got some squabbles. My man can squabble. And I asked him after the fact, what did that guy say to you? Look, what had to happen to drag you into a fist fight? To this day, he won't. He's like, I'm not going to repeat what he said. But Reed got down with a guy who outweighed him by like 40 pounds. A detail.
And he held his own. I remember texting him, and I was really proud because he had a great double leg takedown. And something along the lines of, was McDermott real proud of you? And I don't think he really gave me the response I was looking for. But he held his own and did just fine against a guy a lot bigger.
That's it. Like, I don't know. I couldn't see him getting suckered by a guy like Deebo Samuel and taking it like.
No.
But so with that, Chris, I want to close the show with our keys to victory.
Wow, that's a lot of keys. Bigger the keychain, more powerful the man.
All right. Make this quick, very succinct. Chris, you got to score 10 in the first quarter. I mean this. Score 10 in the first quarter and you're halfway home. Do you want to know why? Ask me why.
Why, Drew? Please tell us.
San Francisco hasn't scored more than 7 points in the first quarter since week 5 when they played the Cardinals. Their offense, even when their quarterback was healthy, doesn't put up points. I mean, we forgot to mention the fact that they're missing Brandon Ayuk. He's been going the whole season. Yep. Like, this team has been ravaged by injuries. They're not healthy.
Kudos to him at least getting that contract. I mean, that's why those guys fight for that stuff.
That's why you have to fight for the bag. And fans can naysay what all they want. You got to get paid. Because if you don't get paid, you have no idea how close you are to a season-ending, maybe career-ending injury.
Yep.
Get paid. The Bills have not had the fastest starts in the NFL this year.
No, those scripted plays really weren't working out for them.
The Titans game, everyone was just on the ledge. And I'm like, guys, why am I the only one who's not upset? But that's because I missed the first 3 possessions. So, we've been rounding into form. We've been finding ways to execute. If you look at the state of the 49ers, they're not exactly robust on defense. They don't have it all going for them. And if you can get a lead and carry it into the second half, even just early, it's going to put an immense amount of pressure on them to answer. And that's going to make them desperate. They're going to start taking chances. Did you see how many turnovers they had against Green Bay?
No.
It was embarrassing. The quarterback holding the ball too long, pocket integrity breaking down because their offensive line isn't healthy. But the quarterback is so dead set that, I need to make a play. You need to give them that anxiety so that we can capitalize on their poor protection. And the only way you're going to do that is by getting ahead on the scoreboard. You have to make them feel it. Get them out of running downs. Let them know that, listen, Jordan Mason, Christian McCaffrey, they can't save you.
Yep.
You're going to have to throw if you want to stay in this thing. So go ahead and trust your leaky pass protection.
Yep.
Let's do this thing. Also, that interior offensive line of theirs isn't good. Okay? I think that there's a lot of things here that we can work on. I'm going to talk about that more in a second. But also, do you believe that a newly aggressive Sean McDermott might be able to have a better handle on this than the Sean McDermott of old?
I would think so, yeah.
I mean, the guy that we've watched the last few weeks coaching the Buffalo Bills has shown his balls on multiple occasions where he's willing to go for it on fourth downs. He's against opponents who he knows can score.
Yep.
Against a team like this, I want to see Sean McDermott and the coordinators come out and really foot to gas right from the jump. Gamble. Go for it. Because the statistics and the analytics show you that late in games, San Francisco tends to fade anyway. Gamble early.
Yep.
Because if you do, you can put this thing to bed. you could put, Chris, we could be home by halftime if they do this thing right.
That would be nice.
And then the other side's going to be winning the interior of the line on defense. Now, the Kansas City Chiefs, regardless of what you think about their tackles, I mean, I think they're being known as bad now. People are catching up to that. The Bills did a really nice job against the Kansas City Chiefs offensive line. Creed Humphrey. Creed Humphrey, Trey, what's his name? Trey.
That escaped me right now.
They're not gonna, and then they've paid a lot of money, and they have some really good interior offensive linemen, and they weren't good enough to change the course of the game. We didn't allow it. I think that we're gonna have to have another game like that from Daquan Jones, Ed Oliver. Now, last game, this is interesting. Last game, Jordan Phillips saw more run, but against the Colts, when they had a really good running back, we saw more Quinton Jefferson. I think this is a Quinton Jefferson game, more so than a Jordan Phillips game.
I'd be okay with no Jordan Phillips games.
That's fair. That's fair. I'll drink. Hey, cheers. I'll drink to that. But so what I'll say is that we need to win that matchup specifically, because if we can disrupt that part of their offense, that's going to feed our ability to get ahead on the scoreboard and make it that much harder. I need Ed Oliver to be present. I need to see him perform. Now, he had some rough games leading up to that Kansas City game, but then he was good.
Yeah.
Him and Daquan Jones were both regularly in the backfield, disrupting rushing routes, moving Patrick Mahomes off his spot. If we can do it against them, we need to try to be able to replicate it against what is a very inferior interior offensive line of the 49ers right now. With all the guard injuries and just the shuffling and the inexperience, we have to be able to take advantage of that. And if we can do those two things, I don't know that this San Francisco team keeps this competitive into the late third.
I mean, between the injuries on defense is not going to be able to stop Josh Allen, and the offense, think of what, Deebo Samuel and George Kittle. I mean, and our linebackers have shown to shut down most of the tight ends we play. Go with Deebo, get out there. Okay, then when you miss the catches, and,
cool. You have one thing. You have one thing that works.
Yeah, awesome. And then when he misses the touchdown or whatever else, then the long snapper can come and punch him in the face. So.
Chris, that would be fitting, wouldn't it? Tabor Pepper on national TV, just laying out Deebo Samuel on the sideline after he drops a pass or gets tackled for a loss.
Deebo sitting there bitching about something, and Pepper just comes boom right across. Doesn't even see him coming. Sucker punches him.
Guys, I can't wait. Hopefully that's how this whole thing ends. But either way, we got to get the hell out of here for tonight. This has been fun. Hopefully this ends in a Bills win, because if it does, it puts us... I think it might be the victory that clinches the division if everything goes according to plan. I'm Drew Gear. That's Chris Kruger. This is Kyle Trimble from BangedUpBills.com, and this has been your Rock Pile Report.